Okay, so let me introduce you to the next speaker, me. So it's really weird to introduce yourself, I know, and I'm really looking forward to introducing our other speakers as they come on. But I need to let you get to know me a little bit better before we get started. And some of you know me, some of you have been following me for a while, some of you might be new, and this might be the first time, other than the welcome that session that I did just a few moments ago. This might be the first time you're hearing from me, so I need to let you know who I am. So my name is Grant Herbert. I'm here in Sydney, Australia, and I am an emotional intelligence subject matter expert who has the privilege of traveling around the world and working with people just like you. I am a qualified social and emotional intelligence coach, a master trainer in that same discipline. And not only do I work with clients, I also train, certify, and mentor other coaches and trainers and human resource professionals to be able to do the same thing. I started an organization called People Builders, which is the company that is sponsoring and putting on this summit. And I have worked for many, many years now as a leadership trainer and coach, and been able to work with individuals and teams all around the world. I am a neuroscience nerd. I am a constant learner. And I want you to understand that everything that I teach and that I share in things like this comes out of learnings that I've had from, a book, a program, a teacher, a mentor, some, type of learning. But then I've implemented that in my own life. So most of what I'm going to bring you is always going to be out of my own journey of imperfection. I tell people all the time, I'm a subject matter expert in social and emotional intelligence. However, I'm a work in progress in its implementation, just like everybody else. And that includes you. So it's not about me having it all together. Being an emotional intelligence coach makes me no more emotionally intelligent than standing in my garage would make me a car. I've still got to implement the strategies that I know, and I've got to work on that every single day. And that's a little bit about my credentials, etc. However, at the end of the day, I'm an ordinary guy. I've got an outstanding wife, 5 amazing kids, 4 exceptional grandkids, who just puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else, most mornings, right? And the reason I want you to know that is that I want you to make sure that you don't see me, and I think I said this before, or any of our speakers, as being their way out there, right? And it's all right, they can do it, right? This can hold you back from getting the most out of what we're going to do today and out of this session that I'm going to bring you right now. I'm just someone who listens, learns, and does most of the time. Sometimes it takes me longer than it could, and sees the results. It's all about trial and error. And hopefully a lot of the stuff that I've done and I'm going to do in this session will save you some time as well and save you some heartache. I've got a military background and a corporate career background where I know that, I'd never heard of a thing called emotional intelligence. And I now know, about 14 years ago when I first started studying the topic, I know that I didn't have any, right? No one had ever taught me any of that stuff. And I can now look back at those situations and see that that lack of emotional and social intelligence was the reason why I wasn't able to, have the journey that I would have liked to have had. And a lot of people around me as well. So there's some defining moments in my life, just like there are in yours, that led me to make a decision to go down the path that I was traveling. So whatever was happening here led me to go to here based on what I believed, what meanings I put on those particular situations, and particularly around my own identity. So as we get in this today, I just want to remind you to take, one or two things from what I'm about to share with you and implement those strategies moving forward so that you can incrementally grow in your own emotional intelligence. As I said, our theme is all about navigating your emotions in this new normal. And there's a lot of stuff going on, over the last couple of years in particular, the world has changed. And I know that we're all getting sick of hearing this new normal. However, that's going to be around for a little while. And there's going to be some changes and tweaks. And I know that a lot of people are, going through that in different ways. They're making it mean certain things about them. And it's creating behavior which is not serving them. So I want to start off the summit by laying the foundational platform so that every speaker after me can bounce in and they can add layers to that and therefore fill you up as you go along, right? It's like I'm going to be the entree and then your main courses are coming, and I'm going to even slip in at the end and give you some dessert. So if you're ready to get started, let me know in the comments, in the chat if you're watching this live, and we're going to have some fun together. By the way, as you go through every single session today, make sure if you've got questions, as I said, that you put them in there, and either live or at some other point, if your question doesn't get answered, we will definitely come back to you with that. All right, so let's get started. So the reason why I picked this topic and the reason why, I'm putting this summit on again this year is because I've noticed that even though the underlying behavioral issues that come with, human psychology and being a human being are still there, people are manifesting those in different ways. And I want to make sure that we do what we can to do what's going to help us in a different way, right? So some of the things that I'm seeing and what I want you to do is relate to these as they fit you. I hear people telling people not to be too emotional, to suppress their emotions. And I see people holding back and going, I don't know what's going on internally, so I don't want to handle those emotion things, And that's a major challenge. Whenever we suppress those emotions, the energy's got to come out somewhere else. I used to use a joke all the time where I'd say to people, you don't want to do that. You don't want to suppress your emotions, because what it does, the energy goes down and travels below and expands your hips. And none of us want, bigger hips or bigger bellies or whatever. I've certainly got some. That's why you can only see me from here down, because I got a bit going on from COVID as well. I've seen people feeling really, really anxious and uncertain, because change can do that. For some of you, even me saying the word change is invoking some sort of a response, a reaction in your physical body. And being uncertain, not knowing what's coming next. I know here in Australia that we had so many lockdowns and shutdowns. And for me personally, when I landed back in Australia from being someone who was traveling around the world every month, I landed on the 1st of March 2020. Seems like so long ago now. And everything changed. I now didn't know when I was going to be able to travel again. And things were all locked down. And for you, I know there's things as well. And, then there's been conflicts all around the world. People have been, responding in certain ways, reacting in certain ways to these lockdowns and to these shutdowns. There's been wars going on in the world. And, so people are uncertain about what's going to happen next. And I totally understand that. therefore reacting sometimes, and a lot of the time, me included, in an unhealthy way, in a way that's not good. It's not going to serve you or the people around you. And another thing that I've noticed a lot of is people catastrophizing. So what is catastrophizing? That's where something happens and the mind leads you to the worst case scenario. So if I, look at a situation around the pandemic, and for me personally, in my own practice and what I was doing around the world, obviously not being able to do that the same way, that had a major effect on my ability to earn an income. So catastrophizing is when your brain goes to a place and you allow your brain and lead your brain to a place where you go, I'm going to need to go out of business and I'm going to lose my house or whatever it is. So that worst case scenario is really holding people back from, where they could feel, where they could be. So I want to make sure that we go from, suppressing our emotions, ignoring them, worrying about them, being, all these things, to navigating the emotions. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, and that's why it's the theme. And the reason I want to use the word navigate is it's a journey that we're on, right? So navigating emotions and using our emotions to actually go on the journey, no matter where it is that it's taking us, is a totally different way of doing it and can give you a much different result as well. So instead of feeling, anxious and confused and uncertain, I want to be able to help people to feel more joy, more peace, more confidence in yourself, as well as the confidence in what's going on around you. One of the major things that I work on with people in the 26 competencies of social and emotional intelligence that I train and coach is around their personal power. And my personal experience is that personal power is the underpinning competency for all the other 25. But being able to help people to build up their personal power, and personal power says that you've got everything within you and around you to get ahead in life, to be who you need to become so that you can have what it is that you want to have, and that everything's going to be okay. Yeah, we're all teachable. We're all on a journey. We're all got things happening and we need to shift and change to go with that. But I want to make sure that I can empower you to go out of today with more confidence in you. So to do that, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to dispel some myths that you might have been taught about emotions, right? I'm going to then talk about a 3-step process to go through to help you with, getting a different result than you might be getting right now. But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from. So firstly, I want to talk about before the new normal, right? And then my experience going through that new normal, and then where I've been able to come now. And the reason I tell that story, by the way, my story is not about me. My story is about you. Well, that doesn't make any sense, I know, but it will as you go through. Because what I want you to do is, as I'm going through my story, which is going to have my content, I want you to put it into your context. I want you to see yourself through my story. So even though I'll be talking about things that are different in terms of experiences, I want you to filter that through your lens. And hopefully that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Just come with me, and I know that we will pick this up as we go along. So when I was 15, I found out that when I was 6 months old, my mum put me on a doorstep at someone else's house and abandoned me, left me there. And when I found out about that, I had a pity party for the next 25 years. You see, it's not what happens to you in life that matters, it's what you make it mean. And at 15, the way I was feeling, even though I couldn't remember being 6 months old, I navigated that in an unhealthy way. And the meaning that I put on it was that, well, hey, if a mother could drop their child off, then obviously they don't love them. And therefore, nursed and rehearsed over a period of time and filtered through how I was feeling about myself anyway at that point, that went from my mother didn't love me, therefore I'm not lovable. And that became a self-fulfilling prophecy because it eroded who I thought I was. And my self-worth, which was already really low, went even lower. So I went on a journey from that point as I was having that pity party to prove myself worthy, to prove myself as being good enough, right? To eliminate those 3 universal fears that we talk about all the time, and that's the fear of not belonging, the fear of not being enough, and the fear of not being loved. And for me, it was a triple whammy. I got the trifecta. I obviously didn't belong in the family because mum left me, right? I obviously wasn't good enough because she left me, but she kept my sister at home. And I obviously wasn't loved because, as I said, I'd made that mean that if a mother would leave their child, that they didn't love them. So before I move on, my beautiful mum who's in heaven, I want to make sure that I paint the picture correctly because I'm telling this story to help you. It's not a story about my mum. So the thing was, back then, my mum had postnatal depression. I'm 60 years of age. That's quite a long time ago. So back then, it wasn't something that was readily recognized and talked about. So basically, here's your baby, go home, do your best. So the truth of the story back then, by the way, Dad went and got me when he came home. So I wasn't there for long. But the truth of the story was my mother loved me so much that she was willing to give me up so that I can have a life moving forward that she felt in her current mental state that she wasn't able to give me. So there's 2 stories there that I could have believed. There's 2 meanings that I could have put on that. And the reason why I chose the negative one, that I wasn't lovable, that I wasn't good enough, that mum didn't love me, was because it lined up with how I felt about myself anyway. I didn't think I was worthy of anything. I didn't think I was, worthy of being loved. So obviously that meaning fit. The other side of the story would have meant that I had to change, that I had to believe that I was lovable, that I was good enough. In fact, I was that great and worthy and valuable that mum was willing to sacrifice her joy for me. Now, I tell you that story to kick this summit off, to show you some vulnerability, because I want you to be really, really vulnerable as you go through this. The beautiful thing of this is you're on the other side of a screen and you're able to say whatever you want in the comments, and that's fine. But you can navigate this summit today without having other people around you, without, needing to disclose your story. So looking at that story, it's all about belief. It's all about a meaning. So as we go through today, I want you to have the opportunity to look at what experiences in your life, what defining moments in your life can you identify where you have put a meaning on something which isn't true, where you've put a meaning on something like I did out of a place that wasn't quite where it needed to be in terms of your self-identity, your self-worth. Because this is the foundation for everything that you're going to learn about today. See, for you to get the most out of today, you have to put you as number 1. You need to make this all about you. You need to invest your energy today for you because you're worth it. And if you have an internal dialogue that doesn't match up with that, it's going to steal gold nuggets from you today as we go through the summer. So that's before COVID, right? Before the pandemic. And out of that, I could tell you many stories that I don't have time to tell you today, where that belief about myself over those 25, 30 years beyond that meant that I operated out of the performance trap. I was seeking approval from people all the time. I was trying not to get rejected, whether it be at school, whether it be in my military career, my corporate career, and even in the early stages of me being a coach. I tell coaches all the time when I work with them that, just because you're a coach doesn't mean you got it all together. It just means you've got a few more strategies that you can use to incrementally grow and do things differently. So if I then bring it to when the world changed, a couple of years ago, and how I went through that change and that into that new normal. As I said back before, I'm on a journey just like you. I'm a work in progress. And what I found is as I was going into this new normal, because by the way, I loved traveling and doing the things I did, and it felt like that had been snatched away from me. So in that time, I actually regressed a little bit in what I was teaching others. I got to a point where emotionally, physically, mentally, I was down. I thought, how am I going to fix this, right? As if I'm going to be able to fix it anyway, right? Is this ever going to be the same again? I've just put in all these years to build this up, and I've been helping these people and all that. So the dialogue that was going on in my mind wasn't healthy. And the way I expressed my emotions was not healthy for me, and it wasn't healthy for those around me. In fact, I started getting short with my clients. I started not tolerating tolerating things that they were saying and whatever, because it was coming out of fear. It was coming out of uncertainty. And I tell you that so that I can give you some hope, right? That it doesn't matter what you know, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you're going through. Everybody around the world has had some reactions to what's been going on. Because I want you to understand that although you are special and unique, you're not alone in what you're going through. Yes, the content's different. Yes, like for me, for example, the conflict that's going on in different parts of the world right now, I haven't lived through that. So my experience is not the same, and to different levels of intensity. But I want everyone to understand that we're on an even footing here. No one's handling this great. Everybody has had to shift and to change. So by getting back into the fundamentals of what I'm going to teach you, by shifting my own thinking, by getting a new sense of joy and purpose about what I was doing, by stepping into something that would take me from here forward and then focusing on the present, I am now in a much, better, it's not a word I like to use, but a lot better place than what I was even before the pandemic. Because what I did was the things I'm going to teach you. What I did was go deeper into my own topic of social and emotional intelligence. And I went back as if I was starting all over again. And I looked at what I was doing and looked at my own strategies and stopped teaching them alone and started implementing them again. And this led me to some new learnings, and I did some more study, and I looked at benchmarks, and I looked at things that were going on around the world. And out of it, I looked at, with gratitude, what I had gained by this new normal. You see, yes, I traveled the world. I was out of the country every month. I loved working with the people. I loved speaking on stages, working in organizations, working with individuals, whether it was developing coaches and trainers in our offices around the world, or whether it was, working with individuals. I loved all that. But my camera's just playing up a little bit. But I love my family more. I love being at home. And I found that in doing all that I wasn't actually being true to my true priorities. So what the new normal has allowed me to do is, instead of jumping in a car to get to an airport, go on 15 to 30 hours, depending where I was going, of flying, cars at the other end, all that sort of stuff. I've got a 14-second commute from my kitchen to standing in front of this camera. So for me, there was a positive that came out of it. So I started shifting my thinking around, what is good in this new normal. It led me to put some stuff down and to do some things differently moving forward in terms of our, in terms of people builders, in terms of the Emotional Intelligence Academy and all those sort of things. So for me, I started looking at what I could give thanks for out of what had happened. And look, obviously none of that mitigated what was going on in the world. None of that changed the personal loss of friends and different things that went on for me as well, just like everybody else. But what it allowed me to do was get in a place where I was ready to move forward. So how did I do that? What were the things that came out of that? And I looked at, for many, many years, there were some things that I was perpetrating myself as a speaker, as a trainer, an expert in this field, a guru, I get called in some countries. It took me a while, by the way, to accept that, because my personal power is still growing, just like everybody else. But even being in that position of leadership, I was saying things that are not helping. And I was just saying what I'd learnt and hadn't really thought through it. So let me share some of those with you now, and they're going to help you. And they are these myths that we're talking about. And there's a number of them. I'm just going to give us 2 or 3 to get us started in this session. So the first one is having a great understanding around what emotions are and what they're not. So to do that, we obviously need to have a greater understanding of neuroscience. And I'm not a neuroscientist. I have a great friend who's a neuroscientist. She's the person that advises us in our company in terms of, questions around anything that I have with that. But I have a basic understanding and a pretty in-depth understanding as a master trainer of applied neuroscience as to how the brain works, etc. And everything's changed to what it used to be years ago. We know now more because of fMRIs and all those sort of things. We can learn a lot more. So there was an understanding that, the brain processed emotions in a certain way. And there was even things like the fact that, you've heard all these old things about having a lizard brain and an evolved brain, that this happened and different components do this, and left and right brain and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not talking so much about those, even though they've been debunked, but I'm talking about how emotions are formed and what they actually are and what the process is. And we really do need to understand this before we can go through what I'm talking about today. So there was an old school thought that we were born and in our genetic code, there were 5 or 6 or 7, depending on who you talk to, emotions that were imprinted genetically into our brain. And everybody experienced those emotions in certain ways. And, that led people to be looking at facial expressions. Oh, if you're looking, Grant's looking like that, he's confused. Or if he's looking like that, he's angry, or whatever, right? And it leads to a misunderstanding. So emotions are formed differently to what some of us might think. So before we just jump into that, we need to understand what an emotion is. Because people ask me the question as well, is an emotion a feeling? And look, for the purpose of what we're talking about, it's okay to put the two together. However, I just wanted to give you what actually helped me to understand this in a lot deeper way. And that is, an emotion is a sensation that we experience in our body. So it's physiological, right? And it is a cue, it's an alert, it's a clue that something's going on in your world. That's what an emotion is. So what's a feeling? So what happens is when that sensation happens in our body, you put a meaning on that based on your beliefs, your experiences, etc., with the knowledge that you've got. And that leads you into some thought patterns, etc. Now, not only that, the brain is an amazing prediction machine. So all the time, your brain is predicting what's about to happen. And it does that based on what it knows about the world and what it knows about you and what it knows about, what you would normally do when this happens, etc. So with all that going on, that's why the brain then gives you some sort of a signal, some sort of a cue. Then, as I said, you think about that, you make that mean something, a dialogue starts, and then this fleeting sensation, this emotion becomes a feeling. So if I put that into perspective, if I feel a pain, some sort of a sensation here in my chest, if I make that mean I'm having a heart attack, the feeling will be anxiety or something like that. And my behavior will then change because my thoughts will change around what that actually means. So an emotion becomes a feeling. Those feelings can change and escalate and de-escalate, and depending on, what it is that's going on, that can be quite strong or it can have a lesser effect. So being able to understand how emotions are formed is really, really important. So the emotion, as I said, is physiological. The feeling comes from the psychological. And that's what we want to make sure that we get a hold of today in everything that we do. So the psychological is about you. It's about me. It's about what I think about, what I ruminate on, what I make it mean, what I say to myself, my internal dialogue, and then what I do. And then those changes in that will help me to feel this way. And then what I make that mean will help me to feel something different. And we can change in those emotions. And over a period of time, if we stick with that same feeling or group of feelings, it becomes a mood, becomes a state. And that is what I've noticed in my own self and in many people happening a lot more in this time of new normal. So out of that, the second thing that I want us to understand is there is no such thing as a positive or negative emotion. No emotion is negative because every single emotion, no matter what it is, that physical cue, that physiological sensation is designed to get your attention to tell you something. What can be negative or positive is what comes out of that. So the thinking, the meaning, the behavior, the action, that can be negative or positive. So it's a distinction. Some might say semantics. Let me tell you, it's way stronger than that. All right. So we know what an emotion is. We know that a feeling, it leads to the feeling, etc., etc. We understand that now. But as I said, feeling, emotion, whatever, that's really up to you. I just wanted you to understand because it happens like that. I want you to understand what the difference was. What's another one? Another one is that men and women handle emotions differently. No, human beings handle emotions in certain ways. All right, they move through those emotions in certain ways. It doesn't matter anything about gender whatsoever. Another one is people telling people to stop being so emotional. Right? Leave your emotions at the door. We don't bring emotions in here. Impossible, because you're a human being and human beings are emotional beings. So it's really, really important that we understand these things. And then the last one, and this is the one that I'm really taking a stand on right now. And I know it's going to be another one of these semantic things, and people attack me about it. And it's great, because if it stirs up the conversation and gives us an opportunity to talk about it, that's a good thing. And that is this whole thing of managing your emotions. So now that you know how it operates, it's unhealthy to manage the emotion, because what that normally leads to is people ignoring it, suppressing it. So we don't want to manage what happens. We don't want to manage that sensation, that physiological. What we want to do is manage the thinking, manage the response to that emotion. Sounds like a subtle difference. However, it is not. It's the key. And for me, I realized for years, because that's what I was taught, that I would say, manage your emotions. So what do we do instead? That's why today is all about navigating your emotions. So by navigating that sensation, navigating it in a certain way, we choose the feeling. We respond rather than react. And that is all emotional intelligence is. See, emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware of the emotion that you're experiencing in the moment, and then to use that information to manage your behavior moving forward. So now that we understand all these things, now that we have dispelled some of those myths and things that we've all, been taught and we have all experienced, now we can move into, well, what do we do with that? So I want to give you a strategy, something, three steps that you can practice, and then we'll go deeper on those that'll help you to be able to get to that, navigate your emotions. All right, you ready? I'll roll my sleeves up. I'm ready to go. Hope you are too. Okay, so remember as we go into this that I said it's all about in the moment. So it's not overall what's going on, whether you're good at emotions or all those sort of things that people say. It's right here, right now. What is the emotion that you are experiencing? And, how does that make you feel? That's what we want to be able to get to. So the first part of the process is all to do with awareness. That's why in the 4 quadrants that I work in, the first quadrant is self-awareness, right? So to get that self-awareness, we need to be on alert and looking for these things. It needs to be something that is in our day, and there's ways that I, help our clients to do that. The first thing you want to do is notice it. So you experience a sensation in your body. You notice that is happening. So obviously you're aware of it. But when you notice it, this is where it can go either in a positive way, or it can spiral down and lead to unhealthy feelings. Remember, we're going from emotion to feeling and then to state in mood. So the first thing is notice it. So we're not going to manage it. We're just going to notice it. Oh, I'm going through this sensation right now. Oh, I've got a bit of a funny feeling in my tummy. So that is step one. Now we're noticing it without initially responding to it, without it, stirring up or needing to do too much with it. We just want to notice it first. That's the first step. It's like when you're driving along in a car and they've got signs up everywhere to tell you what to do, right? If there's a speed sign there and whatever, if you don't notice it, then you're going to get a ticket because you're going to keep going at the speed you're at. So that's the first thing, is to be able to be aware that these things are going on and to notice them. Just notice it. All right. Then what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to name that feeling. So we've got an emotion, physiological, goes to the feeling. As I said, it happens like that. Yet we've got something going on in the middle, right? In between these two things, there's a lot going on in here. So based on your past experience, your emotional memories, how you're feeling about yourself in that moment, etc., the internal dialogue could be either positive or negative. So if you notice the sensation, the emotion, and you then are going to name the feeling, in between, you need to be able to keep your thoughts in check. So at the start, I talked about the problems. One of those is catastrophizing. So if you're someone that catastrophizes, that it's a dichotomy, it's either things are going really, really well or they're bad, right? So if catastrophizing is something that you do, it's being able to reel that in. It's being able to go through a process of bringing that a little bit more centered. It's being able to control what's going on in your thoughts, in your brain, because the challenge is with all the circuits in the brain, the way they work and all the neurochemicals that work in your brain, when they get triggered, then obviously what you do is going to be different. You've all heard of the fight, flight, freeze response, the stress response, the reward circuits, all these things. So between noticing it and giving it a name, which is the feeling, we need to control that inner dialogue. We need to challenge any of that negativity that's going on. If, in my case, I go, oh, my business is doomed and I'm going to sell the house, I check that and go, is it really? Right? Is that, or does it mean I need to do things differently? Which is what I did. I went from traveling around the world to going online. I don't call it virtual. It's just a little thing that I do because virtual's like virtual reality. It's not real. So what I'm doing is still the same. I'm just using a different medium to get it in front of you. So I've noticed it. Now I'm going to give it a name. So let's talk about that. There are over 2,000 words in the English language alone. Right? If you get into some of the language, like Sanskrit, like if you get into some of the definitions of feelings, it's amazing. But anyway, but in English alone, there's over 2,000. Yet most of us have a little handful that we use of 5 or 6 up to 10 that we use on a regular basis. We're either happy or we're sad or we're frustrated or we're angry or whatever it is, right? So in being able to name what you are feeling coming out of healthy thoughts, because you're controlling that negative dialogue, the first thing we want to be able to do in naming it is name it correctly. What am I meaning there? What I'm saying is, if we are feeling misunderstood and we name it as frustrated, the strategy that we use for frustrated is different to the one that's misunderstood. And I'll give you an example in a moment. So step one in this, or subset one in this naming the emotion or the feeling, is to increase your vocabulary of what it is that you're going to name things that you're feeling. So here's an example. So I'm working with someone and I'm having a chat with them and I'm looking at their face and their face is sort of like going like this. And what's coming back from them is not sort of gelling. And I'm starting to feel like they're not listening, or they're not understanding at least what it is that I'm saying. So I might feel misunderstood. Now that could lead to me, if I ruminate on that in an unhealthy way, it could lead to me going from feeling misunderstood to being frustrated, to being annoyed, to being whatever, all the way up to angry. And the behavior that's going to come out of angry is not going to solve the problem. And in fact, the higher the intensity of the feeling, the harder it is to rein in and to regulate the response that comes out of it. And that's why it's a reaction. So if that situation I talked about is happening and I go, oh, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm going to behave in a way that's going to frustrate the other person as well, and it's not going to work. So if I'm naming it as, I feel misunderstood, I can go, hey, Bill, that's who I'm talking to, Bill. I can go, hey, Bill, can I just ask you, I'm sensing that I might not be communicating this correctly. Can I just check in as to what it is that you feel I'm saying, or you think I'm saying, or whatever, right? And they come back and I can get rid of any misunderstanding here rather than try and work through when I've navigated up to here, right? Into anger. So we've noticed the emotion, that physiological sensation. We've controlled our thoughts and, done our best to navigate that part of the process in a healthy way. And now we're naming the emotion. So to do that, and this is where we're using the word emotion and feeling interchangeable, right? It's always going to happen depending on who you're listening to. So, and either way is fine. So when you do that, when you name the emotion, you need to be able to fit it into one or two ways of saying it. Ask yourself the question to be able to answer, I feel whatever that one word feeling is right now. Or I am feeling whatever that is right now. So to do that, obviously, we've got to be able to take that pause in the moment. Now, this happens really quickly, as I said, but we want to be able to name the emotion, because we're not able to manage the response of an emotion that we don't know what it is. As I said before, we'll use a different strategy. All right, so we've now named it. We now know what it is. We now start the process now of navigating that feeling to get a healthy response. So that's step number 3. So we've noticed, we've named, and now we're going to navigate it. So instead of suppressing it, instead of ignoring it, instead of reacting to it, we've now given ourselves some space and a structure to be able to navigate it in a healthy way. Because we've got our big voice in control rather than our mini-me, that inner dialogue that's not serving us. We're eliminating the fears that we thought that we had, or we're eliminating the meanings that we're putting on things that are not healthy, etc. So now we're able to navigate the emotion. So whether it's I feel angry, or I feel sad, or I feel happy, we want to be able to navigate that so that we take it towards the behavior that we want. So how do I want you to use this, or how can you use this, right? The first thing, as I said, is recognizing that emotions are a good thing. Emotions are never negative, that they're there to give you the sign so that you can respond to what it is that's going around you in your world. We're responding rather than reacting because we're going through a process that's going to set our brain and nervous system up to best help us to be able to do that. So we're not managing the emotion, we're navigating it and controlling and regulating the thought patterns, the meanings, and therefore the behavior. So that's what I wanted to start us off with today. I wanted to give you some practical steps based in science and experience so that you could then take every single thing that we go through today with the different speakers, no matter what part of the world they're from, no matter what their unique take is on the particular topic that they're going to be talking about. You can actually put it into that framework, and you can get yourself in a position where you can decide how you feel. You see, no one makes you feel anything. That's a choice. No one makes me feel sad. No one makes me feel happy. That's up to me. And that all comes at that start process of what I make it mean. Whatever goes on around me in my world, whether it's finding out I was put on a doorstep, whether it's my business, the way I was doing it, stopping, or whether it's moving through and going forward now with the amazing opportunities that are in front of me. I'm going to do that in a way that's good for me, good for others, and good for the greater good. So I hope you got something out of that. I know I did. Every time I do one of these, yes, I'm here to serve you, but I talk to myself every single time because I believe you're either green and growing or ripe and rotting, and I'm a continual learner, and it's a journey of imperfection, as I said. So I'd love your comments down below. We're going to have a break now, and then in that break, there's a few announcements and different things that you can look at depending on what's important for you. And for those of you joining me tomorrow, I'm really looking forward for the VIP upgrade people, how we're going to go through, and I'm going to do some coaching with you. Really looking forward to that. But I'm going to be with you all through today in the summit. I'll introduce each of the speakers, and I'm going to come back as well as the final speaker, and I'm going to talk to you about something from a different perspective that's going to empower you even more. So enjoy the break. Make sure you go and hydrate, stretch, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to, because you do not want to miss our next speaker. It's a privilege to serve you, and I look forward to seeing you after the break.